Welcome to the Neubacher Award Ceremony. To everyone in the audience, to the Neubacher family, to our disability community, to our allies, it is a pleasure to look out and see all your faces this morning. I am Stephanie Rosen. I am chair of the Council for Disability Concerns. I took over that role from Jack Bernard almost about 2 years ago now, and it's been an honor to serve for the council, and I'll tell you a little bit about what we've been up to. Before I get to that, I get to name some of the people who helped make this possible and say thank you. So we definitely want to thank the Office of the President, Vice President, and Secretary of the University for supporting this event. We want to thank the Neubacher Award Committee, a group of individuals who put their work together to make this entire event possible. And we want to thank all of our generous co-sponsors who give us the space, the food, the video, all of these details that make today so special. And that includes the Council for Disability Concerns, University Human Resources, the Office for Institutional Equity, and Michigan Medicine. So thank you so much to those units. So I just want to tell you a little bit about the council. I'm relatively new to the council. Some of you could tell me more about it, I'm sure. But some of you may be relatively new to our work, and I just want to catch you up of what we've been doing. The council is about to enter its 37th year. And I realized as I was preparing my remarks this morning, so am I. So, since I'm the same age as the council, I know from personal experience that this age is a time of tremendous growth. And I think that's true of the council too. I want to tell you a little bit about some new initiatives that we've been involved in recently. Right now, we're bringing together an advisory board to have an internal decision-making body that represents the diversity of our disability community and our many different expertises and knowledges. We've just hired on 2 new student administrative assistants, Joanna Demas and Marjorie Herbert. We've just launched a new website that states our mission and vision statement that we've collectively revised. And all of this is to better support the work that we've always been doing and to ground it in our constantly growing and diverse disability community at Michigan and beyond. The council also has new visibility at this time in the university's history. As the campus becomes more interested in the experience of students and staff and faculty with disabilities, we have the opportunity to affect more influence and change, along with a growing collection of organizations on campus focused on disability culture, disability climate, and disability inclusion. So we are not alone. There are many organizations that we can now partner with. So that's just a brief update on what we've been up to. I want to now pass it over to Anna Schnitzer and give her a brief introduction. So Anna is the council coordinator who has made so much of our work possible for so long. Many of our new initiatives are to figure out ways to make Anna's work more sustainable because she's been doing so much forever. I want to also mention that Anna is the coordinator of the Neubacher Ceremony Committee. She led the group that made this event possible, that solicited nominations, and selected our award recipients today. And I just want to personally thank Anna for her work and her continued commitment to this work and to ongoing learning and growth. So thank you, Anna. It's my pleasure to invite you up next.
Thank you, Stephanie. I've been here many times, but every time is like a new time. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to see you here. And I'm even more delighted about the progress that disability and the disability community are making at the University of Michigan. And I have to say, just stepping onto a soapbox for couple of seconds that I thank President Mark Schlissel for putting into place the initiative on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the library. I work in the library. We also say accessibility, DEIA, because I think it opened the door for disability. I think we kind of stood a little bit outside the door for a while, but now the door is wide open. And I would like to tell you a few narratives of people who have done amazing things at this university for everybody. So I'll cut right to the chase and start now announcing the names and the people who we feel are deserving of certificates of appreciation from the Council for Disability Concerns. The first name I have is Natasha Abner. If you'd like to come forth, we have a certificate of appreciation for you. And I'll just say a couple of words about why Natasha is receiving this, in addition to having a wonderful shirt that says disability.
Liberation or barbarism.
Okay. Natasha is in the linguistics department, and her research focuses on signed language, and she particularly works with the structure, which can tell us about the structure of human language and the role of modality in the perception of production of language. She has started presenting her work on a national basis. She engages in both public writing and speaking on behalf of empowering people with disabilities and on behalf of sign language and its importance. Another thing that Natasha does is she's an advocate for Camp Looking Glass, which is a free, all-round recreational center for children with disabilities, and it's located in the Mississippi Delta. And since joining the university, she has designed and taught a first-year seminar on deafness and disability, which alerts first-year students to a wide-ranging set of issues related to inclusion and participation for people with disabilities, particularly as they are affected by language. So she regularly invites people with disabilities as guests to her course and regularly serves on panels. For her work with the disability, particularly with sign language, which I think is more or less unusual, at least to my recollection, we would like to present the certificate of appreciation to Natasha. The next person to whom we'd like to present a certificate of appreciation is Kimberly Austen Baker. Is Kimberly here? Well, if she's not here, let me just tell you a little bit about her. She's from the Detroit area, and what she has done is that she has set up a disability awareness project in Detroit, which specializes or focuses on spinal cord injury recovery. She is in the Department of Behavioral Sciences and Department of Literature, Philosophy, and Arts at the University of Michigan in Dearborn. So we will be sending her by mail her certificate. Kimberly Austen Baker. The next individual whom we recognize and honor is Matthew Basinski, who is Matthew here? Yes. Okay. So Matt is dedicated to helping children with disabilities, specifically, but not limited to those with tracheostomies and ventilators. And he ensures that these children have as much of a normal and happy life as they are able to have. Many times this includes Matt giving his free time to participate in adaptive sporting events for these children so that they get the experience of participating in team sports. He's also responsible in a large part for fundraising and social media management for a summer camp for ventilator-dependent children called Trails Edge Camp. And he also assists with other organizations outside of the state of Michigan to support and volunteer for events that benefit families and individuals who have pancreatic cancer. So Matt has recently signed up, maybe you've already done this, maybe this is dated information, for the Half Ironman race to raise money and awareness for Trails Edge. Did that happen yet?
August.
Okay, it happened in August.
I survived.
You survived. See? We're glad to have you here. You survived. Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate it.
We'll just set this aside real quick and just post on it, please.
Okay, I'm supposed to pose here.
There we go. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Professor Clive D'Souza, if you'd like, I know you're here, so if you'd like to come front and accept an award, certificate of appreciation. Professor D'Souza is from the Center for Ergonomics, Industrial and Operational Engineering. He has dedicated a large part of his career to developing innovative approaches to enhancing mobility for people with disabilities. He's also engaged in research, teaching, and service, and every aspect of his job involves helping people who have disabilities. Professor D'Souza co-organized a 2.5-day conference called 21st Century Transportation Careers for Students Who Are Blind and Visually Impaired. And this conference introduced blind students and students with low vision to future career opportunities in autonomous transportation. 40 young people with disabilities from around Michigan attended this conference and learned about the autonomous vehicles and how they could one day improve their quality of life and perhaps lead to a vibrant career in transportation. This event was done with input from the disability community in collaboration with the Michigan Bureau of Services for Blind Persons and the Michigan chapter of the National Federation of the Blind. So Clive's, Professor D'Souza's work at the Inclusive Mobility Research Lab, he works with the Ann Arbor Center for Independent Living and provides valuable research projects that actually result in access to transportation for people with disabilities. Thank you very much, Clive. Amy Charlotte DeWitz, who is known by the name of Charlotte, is in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. She is a student with the expected year of graduation of 2020. So Amy and her dog Fish are here to receive a certificate of appreciation because Amy has taken a proactive, courageous, and deeply personal stance on disability-related issues through her blog, which is called bendybiologist.com, if you want to look it up. I've read her blog in the past. Thank you, Amy. And it's on topics like access anxiety that many folks with disabilities feel when confronted with something outside of regular routine. And other topics have also included something that many people don't know about called the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. On a personal level, she's also blogged about her experiences with positive aspects of a feeding tube. Positive aspects of a feeding tube. That takes creativity. On the PBS NewsHour, the science section, there was a segment on Amy, and it talked about how, Charlotte, I shouldn't say Amy because, it might be offensive. The middle name, Charlotte's okay. All right. She talked about how she traverses the U of M campus. You'll be interested in this. Scooping up squirrels, because that's her main project. She wants to try to understand why some squirrels actually go for a piece of pizza that the students have in their hands, while others just run and hide. Charlotte tags these squirrels, and she watches their behavior. She grabs them, tags them, puts them in a box, watches their behavior, and then she finally sets them free to climb the tree of their choice. seriously, Charlotte is in the forefront of research of expanding the boundaries of accessibility in science, and we thank you for that. We appreciate having you. We value you, and we have a certificate of appreciation that I guess I'll pose with Fish and you. Now we have a certificate of appreciation for Nancy Gell, who was unable to be here because she's in Vermont. But she is a U of M alumna, and we wanted to recognize her, and we will send her her certificate through the mail because she is known for the following major achievements. She promotes accessibility among students and the community through a class she teaches on health promotion and disease prevention. She has an inclusion project, which is an ADA training for the University of Vermont campus community for those with disabilities. She's engaged in Special Olympics health communities. She does adaptive kayaking, and she supports accessible playgrounds, and she's also involved with Power Chair soccer recruitment and promotion. So we're going to be sending the certificate to Nancy M. Gale in the great state of Vermont. Darryl Goostin is a student in the School of Social Work. His nominator says he's an amazing community leader, has been very active in the school, providing awareness and consciousness raising about disabilities, with an emphasis on sight impairments. He has great tenacity and thrives, according to his nominator, with a positive attitude and a smile on his face. So we would like to present the certificate to Darryl Goostin. Just recently, by the way, he envisioned and developed and organized and implemented a full-day workshop called Every Star Deserves to Shine, Hope, Cope, and Learn About Disabilities, offering the School of Social Work and the greater community an opportunity to gain insight, discuss a spectrum of disability diversity. I was there, and I thank you very much for that workshop, Darryl. I shake your hand. Thank you for your workshop.
Oh, thank you.
Gary Greca is a rising second-year medical student. Is Gary here? He's probably too busy with his medical student studies, but anyhow, I want to tell you a little bit about him. We're very understanding of that. People do have other things to do on the side here, especially medical students. He started in the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Justice Department as a paralegal and continued to be highly praised in his work, won numerous awards for his work, especially in prisoner health care and healthcare advocacy for the disabled, and had a major role in creating data analysis systems for major cases that the Department of Justice brought against various states that were not providing adequate health care for inmates, and especially people with disabilities. So he left in 2018 to begin medical school and was given awards for his service there, and people there were extremely sorry to see him go, but we're extremely happy to have him, and we'll send his award via campus mail, I think, to the medical school. Jessie Grizzle is the director of the Robotics Institute and a professor of electrical engineering. Now, his nominator wrote, "Because of Jessie's hard work, accessibility is not just a metaphorical value we talk about at the Robotics Institute, it's literally being built into our physical space." He requested additional follow-up to discuss options to improve acoustics so that everyone could participate in events regardless of hearing ability. An additional study was performed, several special meetings were held, and finally it was decided that an addendum would be added to the building project's audiovisual bid package to include assisted listening devices. Through Jessie's recommendation, the Robotics Institute will use the assisted listening devices for building tours and large events. In addition, the College of Engineering is investigating using these devices for tours, and we hope that these devices will be disseminated throughout campus. Thank you very much. Is Dr. O here? Because if he's on his way. Okay, we'll wait for him. We'll put this aside till he comes. Okay, the next one is, skipping Dr. O and the disability team just momentarily, Kenneth Pitchett, MD. Would you like to come up front? Because I know you're here. Yes. So, Dr. Pitchett has taken care of children with disabilities for decades. His name is well known to all the faculty, staff, residents, and medical students at Mott Children's Hospital, as well as to many parents of children with chronic complex needs. He's frequently called upon to deal with a difficult patient situation. I believe you said that there was one on your way here. Somebody called, had a difficult patient situation that you were called upon to deal with. Recognizing the complexity of care for the parents of children with disabilities and the myriad of clinic and hospital visits they go through, he has worked for years to plot a home-based program that brings providers into the patient's home. Secured some funding from the state of Michigan, Medicaid, Hospice of Michigan, and U of M to launch this home-based program called Partners for Children in August of 2018. Only a few states in the country can boast of having such a home care program for children with disabilities. Since the launching of Partners for Children, he has accepted over 100 children with chronic complex needs and disabilities to the program. And the home-based team consists of nurse practitioners, social workers. They take care of the patient's needs by participating along with the physicians in the medical care and coordinating access of various healthcare providers. Thank you very much. We'd like to recognize you for what you do. We appreciate it. It's a wonderful thing. We have Robert Shoney, who was not able to come today. He's a passionate advocate for people with disabilities. His impact resounds as a researcher, community activist, and person living with a disease that steals one's ability to move. He embodies the spirit and intent of this award, and he is very deserving of recognition of a certificate of appreciation. Dr. Shirley is a U of M professor of economics and public policy, with his research focusing on the labor market and health and the rates of disability and why they have changed over the past half century in the US and abroad. So this is something that will be sent in the mail because he was not able to attend. Officer Russell Tant of the U of M Flint Department of Public Safety. This is an interesting narrative in that in August of 2018, Security Officer Russell Tant assisted one of the students who has mobility limitations, and the student struggled to access the Safe Ride van. So Officer Tant took his own time, his own wood, his own effort, and built a small wood step off duty at the resident and as an access step. He may have done a small step, but it was a large step for the student and the subsequent students who are now able to access the special van. So we thank Officer Tan for his caring and his thoughtfulness and for taking his time to do this step for the student. Thank you. Melissa Tinny. Is Melissa Tinny here? Melissa Tinny, MD, is actively expanding adaptive activities for both the VA and the UMHS. She engages every disabled patient she sees with a multitude of pamphlets and flyers and is, hi there, and is very concerned with physical medicine and rehabilitation depending on their disability. She says not everyone can go to their local gym, but she makes sure that people who have disabilities are engaged in rehabilitation therapy at the hospital or clinic, and whether they like kayaking or camping, new activities that they have not previously enjoyed, she introduces them to such activities. She says adaptive sports give children and adults with disabilities the realization that what they might have thought was impossible is actually doable, enjoyable, and beneficial in a myriad of ways. Thank you very much. I think we have to close. Thank you. Ashley Wiseman. Ashley, in her role as Associate Director of the Global Scholars Program, is responsible for training and guiding our students in her curriculum and events, and she is careful to provide small yet accessible options in place so that all students feel included. She conducts various workshops on disability and awareness for global scholars, also serves on the Student Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access, that's IDEA board, charged with providing recommendations for the Provost Office. She's a strong advocate for a disability culture institution at the university. Ashley arranges panel discussions. You may have attended one of her many panel discussions. She and Stephanie Rosen, the council chair, received a grant from the National Center for Institutional Diversity, and they are working to populate this project, which is called Mapping Disability Inclusion Knowledge Community. If you say disability culture, I think of Ashley, because she is so involved and such a wonderful advocate for the disability culture at the University of Michigan. Thank you very much for everything you do. I haven't mentioned half of it because time is short, but thank you. Very good poses. Amy York could not be here. She's a physical therapist and associate director of community outreach in Flint. Briefly, I'll describe her work. She's an exemplary advocate for individuals with disabilities, overseeing the PT Heart Pro Bono Clinic at the Sylvester Broom Center in Flint. She assists students in treating clients with neurological conditions whose insurance coverage has run out. She also directs the Parkinson's Wellness Recovery Program, which is a weekly exercise program for community members with Parkinson's. So we'll send her her certificate of appreciation. Now we've saved this till last because we don't know, is Dr. O here yet? Dr. O, there you go. Could you come forth? Oh, Dr. O. All right, this is a team certificate because this is the M Disability team, and it consists of Michael McKee, Lisa Meeks, and Faranmi Okalami, MD. They're all MDs. I should have said MD after each one of them. But These three faculty have had a stellar 2 years promoting health for people with disabilities, teaching students and residents and faculty and staff about people with disabilities, conducting cutting-edge research around helping people with disabilities, and the examples are many. Here are a few. Hashtag Docs with Disabilities. That's on Twitter. It's gone viral, and also there's a prominent American Association of Medical Colleges report on how schools can better support students, residents, faculty with disabilities. They have achieved an adaptive sports program at Michigan, which has already been highly subscribed to and has great potential and a way to go. Recently, there was a paper in the New England Journal that gave perspective on physicians and other medical care workers with disabilities. And they're called Disability because this is a program geared to support all missions around helping people with disabilities. They form partnerships with physical medicine and rehabilitation, as well as other schools at Michigan. People around the country are taking note of Michigan medicine specifically because of this Disability. And the Department of Family Medicine also has a lot to do with it. It's the place that they kind of work out of. We thank you, Dr. Zazo. So this is the premier place now for health care for people with disabilities, and also physicians and medical students who happen to have disabilities who want to go to medical school should come to the University of Michigan, Michigan Medicine. Thank you very much for everything you've done. Can't begin to list it. It's so much, but thank you. Yeah. Oh, I have to pose.
Pose in there.
Oh, that posing, wow. I want to now introduce one of our spectacular disability community leads, who was the former chair for many, many years, 17 years, I believe, of the Council for Disability Concerns, and still a wonderful advocate. If we need something, we know who to call, especially in the legal realm. It's Jack Bernard.
Good morning, everyone. So it's wonderful to be here. This is definitely my favorite day of the year, and it's a real treat for me to be able to stand up here and talk with everybody. It's fascinating for me to listen to the wonderful descriptions of all of the people who received certificates of appreciation, because at least half of the people who received those certificates I know, and know that you didn't even get to hear a scratch of the surface of the kind of work that they do. You just got a little overview of it, and it's really wonderful to see people acknowledged. And I just want you to know that, like the mighty iceberg, there's a whole lot more underneath what you got to hear. Stephanie talked about being 37 and having been chair of the council for a couple of years. And what's interesting is I'm 53, and I was chair of the council when I was made chair of the council. I too started at the age of 35. So I do wonder whether there's some sort of constitutional requirement that you have to be a certain age to. And Stephanie, I do have some bad news for you. You look so youthful now, but just wait. Just wait. So it's typical that I'm asked to say a few words about things I've been thinking about before we move on to the Neubacher presentation. But before we do that today, the council has asked me to do something very special, and that is to present an additional award today. And I'm very, very excited to do this. And I have it here. I have this here. And the recipient has no idea that she is a recipient of an acknowledgement from the council today. And our recipient is Loretta Thomas. So Loretta did not know that this was yeah, right. She would have said no. And Loretta's helping us out a little bit later, but it's really it's important for us, though, even though Loretta would object to this. It's important for us to acknowledge Loretta because it is about what I had mentioned earlier about this iceberg notion that I want to acknowledge. I want you to help me acknowledge in Loretta. We often get to see Loretta up at the podium. We get to see all of the amazing work that Loretta has done for the university and for the community as a leader, as someone who has worked in human resources, as a professional in human resources for over 40 years. You know, Loretta recently retired from the university and is going off to do amazing things. Some people just retire and relax. This is not the case for Loretta. But what I want to highlight for you about Loretta are not the things that you know about, but the things that are beneath the surface, the things that happen when no one is looking, when no one would know. Just the little adjustments that take place behind the scenes, raising issues in meetings that have nothing to do with diversity or equity or inclusion of any kind, being a champion when there isn't necessarily any acknowledgement of that act and of stepping up and raising the concerns. Loretta has always been supportive of the council. She comes to every year to these events. It's very difficult to get people at the university who have enormously busy schedules to prioritize attending these kinds of events. But by just being here, it models for the community the kinds of things that we should be celebrating and heralding. And there is no question that without the financial support, the enthusiasm, the supportive presence, that we wouldn't have the kind of assembly we have today if it weren't for Loretta Thomas and the work that she does tirelessly day in and day out, and we all know that she will continue to do. So please help me appreciate Loretta Thomas for this wonderful lifetime of achievement. I usually get to say a few words about the things I've been thinking about, and so I want to share a personal experience that I had 2.5 weeks ago. So I'm sitting in my office. I'm actually on the phone, and my cell phone rings, and it's my mother, and I sent it to voicemail. But then she called immediately back. I was working, I was in a meeting, and so I just said, I'll call you in a minute. But my mother does not call twice. So I was worried when I picked up the phone. And I called her back, and she and my father were there. It was actually a day that my dad was home. My dad is never home. My dad is 84 years old, and he works 5 days a week still, and I think my mother really does not want him in the house. And so they were both on the phone, and they were very upset. They were, I mean, my mother was in tears, and my father, you could hear the pain in his voice, and it was just, I knew something horrendous was coming. And they told me that my son, Max, who's 19 and who just went off to college in Philadelphia, had called them, and he was in trouble. He'd been in a car accident. And he He had hurt his face. And his teeth and his nose. And he, like other young people, had also made a mistake. He had been driving after drinking. Now, he didn't have a car. I was shocked to hear this because he doesn't have access to a car, and I didn't know him to be someone who consumed alcohol, and he'd hurt somebody. And so it was terrible. So I said to them, I'm going to call him immediately. And they said, well, you can't call him because he's in custody and he doesn't have his phone, because he'd hurt somebody under the influence of alcohol while driving. He'd been to the hospital, he'd spent the night in the hospital, and now he was in Philadelphia, and he was in a kind of infirmary at the local jail. And so, I mean, I'm feeling just terrible about this, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I mean, here it was. He was alone out there, having made a mistake and really suffering the consequences. And the person he hit was a pregnant woman in a car. She was in her car. And so I talked to them, and of course I got what information they had for me. He had a lawyer. I got the name of that lawyer. And I headed home and called my wife, and we met at home, and we bought airline tickets to fly out to Philadelphia. And I reached out to the lawyer. Oh, I neglected to tell you something important. So my parents, and this was very hard for them to say, they said, he begged us not to call you. Begged us. You know, he was so upset, but he said, don't call my parents, don't tell my parents. And my father gave him this lecture about the importance of living into your truth, right? Living into the truth is the better way to say that. Living into the truth. What you did is what you did. The mistakes you've made are the mistakes you've made. It's important to tell the truth and to live into the things that happen and the choices that you've made. And so my dad, I think, talked to him for some time about this. And he assured my parents that he would call, but he didn't. He didn't call. So I felt pretty bad about this. But we got tickets, and I reached out to that attorney called Robert Green, and I talked to him, and, you know, I'm an attorney. And the phone was terrible. It was one of those circumstances where when you speak, it echoes back at you. So I was having to interact with him, and he said to me, I really can't talk to you, because he didn't want to talk to you. And I said, but you really have to talk to me. And he wouldn't talk to me, but he said he would go talk to my son. And he said he would call me back, or that Max would call me within 40 minutes. So we got a hotel in Philadelphia, and, you know, this hotel where they didn't have any room, and we negotiated some room, and we're getting ready to go to the airport. We're going to leave at 10:30 at night, and get there about midnight to face the problems, face what has happened. And I got off the phone with the attorney, and I said to my wife, Katrina, he didn't bring a lot of comfort to me. He didn't say much to me, but I just didn't have a lot of comfort. So of course I did what lawyers do, and I went and I hired another lawyer, a guy called Andrew. And I reached out to a friend of mine in Philadelphia who helped me find Andrew. And so I'm looking for Andrew, and eventually my parents call back, and they say they've spoken to Max again, and he tried to reach us but hasn't been able to reach us, and we're surprised. Neither of us has had a call. But they talked to him again, and he was so sorry, and he feels really terrible. But at this point, my parents didn't know that, you know, what our specific plans were, so we told them. And then the lawyer calls me back, Robert, the court-appointed attorney, and he's telling me that Max is, the problem is that there's this woman and the unborn child, And, otherwise these are just 2 misdemeanors and he should be able to deal with them. And I am trying, the phone connection is still terrible. And every time I ask for information, I'm only getting pieces of information. You know how when you're on the phone and suddenly it sounds like, and that's what I would hear, which court, which jail, these kinds of things. I'm not getting this information. And so he said he would text it to me, that his assistant would text it to me. So I then talked to my lawyer, who's trying to reach out to this other lawyer, and we're not making any progress. And so the stress is just increasing because we don't know where to go when we land. We don't, he's going to be arraigned and bonded the next day, right? A bail hearing and an arraignment the next day. So we'll be out there in time, I told the attorney. But now I can't get him to return my calls. And it's, 6 o'clock at night, and maybe he's with his family. I don't know what's going on. I'm starting to do all this research about involuntary manslaughter and things like unborn children. It's terrible what we're going through. And we decide, my in-laws who talk to my parents then tell us that my parents said that he had rented a car. And we couldn't understand how he rented a car. He's 19 years old, and at least in our world, you had to be 25. So I do all this research and discover these days, if you're 19 and you're willing to pay more, they will rent you a car. So we look at his credit card, and there's no payment. We look at his debit card, there's no reduction. So now we're saying he must have not been the one who rented the car. Someone else must have rented the car. And so we think, that that he must have gone with someone else who rented the car, drank too much, and then Max said, okay, I'll drive. We had all these stories and no answers, right? We were trying to put it all together based on what we knew, which was not much. And we still hadn't spoken to him, although my parents had spoken to him twice. And we then said, well, maybe we can see where the accident took place by looking at the last location of the phone. I mean, we bought the phone, we pay for it, so we have the Find My iPhone app on there. He knows that. And so we look, and the phone, we can see where his computer is. It's in his dorm. And his phone is moving on the street, which is very weird. So Katrina then thinks that there was no accident, but he's been abducted somehow, right? That's what her thought is, that he's been abducted. And I don't know. So we call the campus police and say, here's our story. Could you check it out and see who's got that phone? And they're very helpful. And about 12 minutes later, my phone rings and it's FaceTime. And there he is, and he's fine. There's no accident. There's nothing. So it was a scam. So what happened is, my dad was home. My dad is never home. He never answers the phone. And he picked up the phone, and he said hello. It was Yom Kippur. And although my father is Jewish, like my mother, he is not a practicing Jew, but it's a principle for him that he stays home on Yom Kippur and watches court TV all day or something like that. So he picked up the phone, and the person on the other end of the phone said, "Grandpa." Just one word, "Grandpa." And he said the only thing he would normally say, which is, "Max." And he says, "Yes, it's me, Max, and I've had this accident, and I'm having a hard time talking." And so there it went. So it was just 5 hours, right? It was a 5-hour. Yeah, it was horrible. And there are many more serious problems in the world. But I tell you this for 2 reasons. One, don't succumb to it. I think the more we talk about these scams, it's important to know about it because it's powerful. But more importantly, the thing I want you to take away from this story is just the power of belief, the power of believing in a fact. I kept saying to my wife all along, this is not adding up. This is not adding up. But I had this fact. My parents had talked to him. They talked to him. I believed them. I believed them completely. I'm not upset with them. I mean, they were, of course, mortified. They just believed what they believed. But this power of belief is very important. I mean, it's still, you know how when you wake up in the middle of the night with a nightmare, something horrible has happened, and you are now worried, even though you know you're in your bed, you know it couldn't have happened, it still has this effect. Well, for years, I have said, that's not an issue for me. Like, I wake up from a terrible nightmare, and I just say, it's a nightmare, it's not real, it didn't affect me. Well, you can see this affected me. But the power of belief in a fact, it eliminated all these other ways of thinking for me. Questions, I assume things. My parents talked to him. My son told my parents that he'd been in an accident, that he had been injured. So I just believed it. I believed it, and it meant I stopped exploring other avenues. I mean, people said to me over and over again, why didn't you just call him? Well, why would I call him if it would do nothing, if it would make no difference? My parents told me he didn't have his phone. Why should I mow the lawn, right? I mean, it wouldn't have helped the circumstance. But think about the person who has a disability who just hears over and over again that you can't do it. Or if that's what your parents think, that you can't do it. Or that some obstacle exists. It's just taken as a fact. It's presented in a way, it kind of makes sense. I mean, you know, people with disabilities, they're just slower, or it's more difficult to work with them, or they couldn't possibly be a doctor, right? Someone with a disability. Imagine a person who is deaf being a doctor. How could that possibly be? And here is Phil Zazoff sitting right here. The fact that punctures the myth. But those myths are powerful, and they affect us deeply, not when we're thinking about unpacking them, because we don't think to unpack the things that are facts. If we know it, if we trust it, if we have a reason over and over again to have heard this same message. I mean, I'm thankful that my parents didn't buy into that when the doctor said to them, you should start saving now because there's no place in society for somebody who sees like your son sees, right? He sees well enough not to be admitted into schools for the totally blind, but he will never graduate from college. It's unlikely he'll graduate from high school. They could have believed it. And if they had, maybe I would have. Anyway, I tell you this story because I think it's important. It reminds us that in some ways you can't fault people for believing the things they believe, the things that they just happen to believe because of the experience they had. So we have to find ways to break through those deeply held, unquestioned beliefs. It's that unquestioned part that's the important element. And we have made enormous progress on our campus since I've come here in terms of questioning the unquestioned about our constituency of people who have disabilities. The change has been profound. We still have a long way to go, but a big, big part of it is about getting people to question the unquestioned and to realize that our assumptions aren't necessarily true. Okay, so having shared that with you, I will just take a moment and acknowledge the tremendous support we get every year from Sue Deer Hall, who has to transcribe because she steps forward to do this wonderful work. And I would like you to join me in thanking her. We really appreciate all your support, Sue. So now we get to the most exciting part of the day, which is where we get to celebrate our Neubacher recipient. And we would not be here today without the life of Jim Neubacher, who was a student here at the university. And I am so pleased to introduce to you his father, Jim Neubacher, who comes here every year to support these activities, and I haven't really seen him ever not here with good cheer and tremendous support for the work that we're doing at the university. And Jim, if you'd stand and let everyone see you, that would be wonderful. Yeah, Jim, who was Jim's father, is at the heart of the activities that we do here today, and we're so pleased that you make the real effort to come here and be with us. All right, now I have the distinct pleasure of introducing to you someone who I have already introduced, and who has been a tremendous support to the council, and we could not think of a better person to introduce this year's Neubacher recipient than Loretta Thomas. So please help me by welcoming her up to the podium.
Okay, my notes disappeared.
We'll find them.
Are they at this time?
Is there a little folder, a yellow folder?
No, those are my second set. Okay. There's always Plan B.
Great.
Thank you. And this is primarily in support of Sue. Yes. I think, Betty, you are Mr. Neubacher's niece, as I understand, so let's also welcome another family member that is here as well. Say hi, Betty. I think I just need a moment from Jack's story, and I think some of you do too. So let's just take a break for just 3 minutes and turn to a neighbor or someone close to you and share a story about when you overcame the negative belief. As Jack was talking, and I was remembering the impact of, being a little colored girl in California that wanted to go to the University of Michigan and being told in 1966 that would never happen because you're out of state, but because you're colored. And 50 years later, there's been a lot of impact because I didn't believe that, and my parents didn't believe it. So turn to someone close to you and share a really quick story of when you overcame the belief that would have created a barrier for you. I just feel the need to respond to Jack's story because it was so impactful. Thank you, Jack. I was just sitting there.
So powerful.
Yes.
I didn't go into all that, but it was. That's right. Yeah, Yom Kippur will have a whole new meeting, right? The Day of Atonement. So, what they wanted, I didn't go into all that. But they interviewed my dad, the guy, and said, the bails is going to be hundreds of people in the hospital. The bail's going to be $100,000, and the bond will be $100,000. So my dad, said, and the check immediately. And fortunately, it was Yom Kippur, and he couldn't do it. So it was my fault. All they have to do is get one hit. So it's like whole level, and it was real. I'm not going to talk about this for hours. The lawyer was fake, and the guy that pretended to be managed was fake. It was all fake. So what I didn't say is the airline canceled our ticket, the hotel, yeah, the lawyer was taking the money. Yeah, right. I mean, we were all doing all this work, and I didn't talk about the army of people. But the impact, and I should have said more about that, just the ripples of all the people who were. Well, I mean, I definitely, I could have just said, well, the victims.
Take about 30 seconds and wind the story up.
It's like a bad rate, it's still emotional. Well, I think of it that way too. I think yes.
I wish you could see what I see from this vantage point, and what I see in your faces is the power of possibility. And that power of possibility aligns with how we need to believe. And the story I will shortly share with you is about belief. And so I hope that Jack's story will impact us for the rest of our day, our week, our month, as we traverse those paths that lead us to make a difference. Thank you, Jack. Thank you great, thank you, Jack. If I have make a moment, I would not have allowed that award because we all learn from each other. And the council is a tremendous impact on our campus, and I thank Anna for her leadership, all of the council members, Stephanie for stepping up, because we need to learn. Every single day we need to learn. And I have learned so much and benefited so much from the stories that each of the 15 years that I've served as the AVP. I remember going to the first council meeting after being appointed. Actually, Anna sought me out before the first council meeting because she wanted to share some stories and some expectations. And what she told me was the council didn't have a home. There was no place that they looked to for support within the university for the things that needed to be done. And I said, you have a home now. Please allow University Human Resources the privilege of supporting the council. And at this time, I turned that over to the new Associate Vice President for Human Resources, and I know that he will sustain the support of UHR. I'd like to introduce to some Rich Holcomb, who is here with us today, and he will be with you. I know his heart, and he will be with you in his leadership role at the University of Michigan. Now, it is my pleasure to totally make our recipient uncomfortable. What I know about Doug Armstrong is he's a very humble person, but we are here to celebrate him today. And so he's going to just move around in his seat, and he's going to roll his eyes at me, and I'm going to keep going. So hold his hand or his back or his shoulder over there, and let me do what I would like to do here. And now I'm going to the official scripts. It is such an honor and a privilege to introduce to some of you and present to others my hero. My hero because of his passion for children, his creativity, his courage, and his commitment. At 13, Doug began volunteering in a local hospital. At 17, he got his license as an emergency medical technician. He was so young, he needed special permission from the state of Michigan to do that. In high school and college, he volunteered for an ambulance company before joining the University of Michigan Health System's organ transplant program, where he helped retrieve and prepare organs for transplant. Carrying the cooler, as he named his job, led to nursing school and then to clinical research studies, which in turn led him to a Master's of Science degree from the University of Michigan School of Public Health in clinical research design and analysis. His alumni magazine offers his experience that summer camp corresponds with improved health outcomes in children, including greater independence and self-esteem. Doug Armstrong, as a nurse at the University of Michigan, had an idea. The fresh air camp that the university had owned for over 50 years had fallen on hard times and was in serious disrepair. The university was prepared to sell the property. It was very attractive property on a peninsula with water around it and beautiful, beautiful space. No homes right next to it, so it was an ideal for a development. He envisioned a camp there for children who rarely, if ever, have a camp experience. He pursued this idea diligently and ultimately received the support of hospital leadership in Tony Denton and Dr. Robert Kelch. He had a belief. And the university did what many of us thought was a miracle. It encouraged Doug to create a foundation, and the university leased land worth more than $1 million to his foundation for $1 a year. When I met Doug with my human resources leadership team that had volunteered to help at the camp, he and his family, his father in particular, and I believe a brother and other family members, were clearing the brush on the land themselves. They were tearing down rotted decks. They were looking for places to paint, places to restore, and places that needed to be renewed. We were so emotional about our experiences and the possibilities that Doug saw. Every time I have asked him about something not already done, like allowing university work teams to come volunteer for team building experiences, or using the beautiful camp facility for a conference center when not in camp season, he has warmly received the idea and made it happen. He is a real believer in the power of potential and one that patiently, but with commitment, pursues his dream against all odds, making the impossible possible. Nominator Jeffrey Booth said, Doug created a 105-acre camp where the children are allowed to participate in activities most of them have only dreamed about: swimming, boating, hiking, fishing, archery, cooking, sleeping in a yurt, a nature center, arts and crafts, a lopsided treehouse, and an amphitheater to perform skits and to sing around a campfire. Nominator Craig Young shares, what Doug Armstrong has created can only be accomplished by a person driven by a heart that is full of passion and a never-ending drive for making the world a better place for us all. Doug Armstrong will shortly share with you the great outcomes of North Star Reach. Those outcomes are documented in your program. I invite you to join me in celebrating Doug, the person, one who has reached for his own North Star. Let's celebrate Doug for the children, for his creativity, for his courage, for his commitment, for our camp. There is none other than Doug Armstrong. You still speak to me, okay?
Thank you, Loretta, and let me be the first to congratulate you as well. It's quite an honor to be introduced by a true friend, a mentor, and someone who's done so much for the university and for the council. And thank you to the council and certainly to Anna for all of your hard work and for all of the amazing stories that we've heard today. It is very humbling to see just the breadth and scope of everything that is going on. Thank you to the Neubacher family for providing this opportunity to continually recognize, raise consciousness, and celebrate everything that's going on. And then a quick thank you to my nominators who saw the vision and decided to share that, and to my parents and my wife and family that have followed me every step of the way on this long journey, and as Loretta said, been very hands-on in the support of making the impossible possible. I think you took much of my comments, but I'll try to build on that and take it forward. I've committed my professional life to people with disabilities or illness. As a nurse and now directing the camp, I'm excited to share details of North Star Reach with you this morning. And I'm grateful for the community of support that has allowed North Star Reach to flourish. And that includes volunteers, staff, donors who were willing to invest in the camp's success. And it certainly couldn't not have happened without the incredible support of the University of Michigan and specifically the health system, as the creation of a barrier-free, full access program for kids who otherwise have little or no opportunity to attend camp has been the guiding principle. And as Andrea Newman Fisher said last year, it speaks of disabusing disability, which she described as helping demonstrate that being disabled doesn't mean that one is unable. We're here to embrace the belief that everybody is able, that everybody can find ways to participate, and everybody's equal. Jim's mission to educate others about disabilities is still relevant today. It was his challenge that we all use our talents to make the world a better place. I was fortunate to go to summer camp as a child growing up in Michigan and really firmly believe that so many of those experiences I had in the camp setting were foundational for the person I was to become and influenced my beliefs and my willingness to try new things and to think outside of the box and ability to make friends and self-confidence and self-esteem and all the wonderful things that camp provides. I also had several personal experiences as a young child that exposed me to healthcare and the medical system and helped me imagine a place where kids who've dealt with an unlucky hand and been denied an opportunity to experience the joys of childhood are positioned to thrive and maximize their potential regardless of their perceived limitations. As is true for many who've dedicated their lives to providing access and creating inclusion, my life was touched when I spent a fair amount of time in the hospital as a young child with my aunt who underwent successful cancer treatments here at the University of Michigan. Followed that by watching my sister deal with a new disabling diagnosis. At age 8, her feet started to swell. She couldn't fit in any of her shoes, and she was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And I've watched her deal with frustration, isolation, and fear of missing out, and seen her suffer and struggle with limitations, and to continue to focus with determination on pushing beyond. My parents remain passionate about giving back and helping those in need, and encourage my sister and I to be involved in making someone's day brighter. My mother's a pharmacist, my dad taught biochemistry to pre-med and medical students, and both parents began at the local ambulance service when I was a preteen. So it was only natural that I started work at the hospital as a volunteer and then followed in their footsteps at the ambulance service. Beyond giving back, my parents instilled an openness and compassion for all people. My mom was working in a male-dominated industry, and she was consistent in messaging to my sister and me that we could do anything we wanted and we could be whoever we wanted. I combined my science and nursing backgrounds to help build and direct the clinical research program for the U of M Transplant Center, striving to find solutions to clinical challenges. And then it all kind of came together more than 20 years ago. During a routine post-transplant clinic visit, I was with a child and parents, and I made a comment about, well, it's about time to think about summer camp. And they all looked at their feet and shook their heads and said, no, we can't go to camp. And I said, you can't go to camp? I said, no, we've tried, we've applied, and the camps say no. The medication regimens, the complex medical care and supervision that's needed, we can't manage that. And I stopped and I thought about the experiences I had as a child and believed we could do better for these kids, and that if anybody needed an opportunity to go to summer camp, it was the kids who had a belief in perceived limitations. Because as soon as a child's diagnosed, okay, you can't do this, you can't do that. And the opportunity to get them into an environment where we could change that belief and introduce them to a new way of thinking, and created with some nurse colleague friends of mine, Camp Mishitanki, which is a loose acronym for Michigan Transplant Kids. And the Transplant Center supported our efforts to fundraise and take kids to, looks like it's on an auto advance, to take kids to camp. And we did that for 1 week every summer. And it was for all organ transplant children. And we expanded it beyond the University of Michigan and welcomed any transplant child from around the state, and included Indiana, Illinois, and Ohio. And that program continued to grow and was very successful. And I really learned there that the intentional disruption of the status quo for those with health challenges can really lead to the development of resilience and provide opportunities for kids to grow and be their best selves. And I call it a guilty pleasure because it never got old to spend more time, more focus, more energy, more passion invested in making sure that kids had a great time and walking away feeling taller myself. And just, you can see the blossom in the development that happens at camp right before your eyes. In the early 90s, both Paul Newman and Jim Neubacher shared a belief in being disruptive and encouraging people to raise a little hell. Those are quotes from both of these gentlemen. Paul went on to found the Hole in the Wall Gang camp in Connecticut, and that actually has grown into a global network of 30 camps and programs, and North Star Reach became a member camp in 2016. Jim's column in the Free Press became the public voice for awareness for people with disabilities. The courage to raise a little hell is vital to disrupting a mindset, to provoking change, and to elevating consciousness. Mishitanki was a growing camp program, but there were limitations. We were renting space at YMCA camps that weren't really suitable. We were carrying wheelchairs up and down stairs. We were dealing with very deep sand and trying to push kids around the site. We were located hours away from a major medical center, and that involved long ambulance rides or sometimes helicopter transports for kids who got sick. And so it was clear that disruption was necessary if we were going to scale the program and safely care for the complex medical needs of even more campers. And so this led to a huge dream and imagination that was firing on all cylinders. What could camp become if the facilities could be repurposed or purposefully designed from the ground up to really enable us to run the program we wanted to run rather than trying to force a program into the facilities that happened to be available. And that's where the Fresh Air Camp and the abandoned property had been a successful camp for 60 years, started in the early 20s, and in 1980 was mostly abandoned. And in 2005 is when I learned of the pending sale that was really in the court system trying to get the clearances on the deed to actually sell the property. And I proposed a pretty big plan to say, hey, U of M, would you walk away from a real estate deal and allow us the opportunity to redevelop the property? And that plan represented a real paradigm shift, a robust imagination, and a huge leap of faith. And so the vision for the camp, a new camp, a complete makeover. Buildings that were built in the 30s were in no shape to really be repurposed. Sourced with fully accessible sleeping, bathing, dining, and activity areas supported by a true health center to facilitate a program for child-only summer camp overnight sessions and non-summer family weekend sessions was shared really one department at a time. It started with the transplant center, who said, hey, we love Camp Mishitanki, but we're not in the camp business. And letters of support, a plan, a dream. And then it got to Tony Denton's office, and then we got to Dr. Kelch's office, and he helped us get over and talk to student affairs and academic affairs, and ultimately to the president's office, to Mary Sue Coleman, and then to the regents. And without the inspired belief and change in belief of all of those individuals along the way, we wouldn't have camp, we'd have condominiums on this amazing, amazing site. Camp was imagined as a place to present intentional programs where kids and families meet, often for the first time, with others who share the same challenges. And through that process, they develop confidence, self-esteem, They experience a rare sense of normalcy as they build inspiring and transformational communities of peers. Hospitals have really designed out community with new construction that offers private rooms for every patient. And families no longer cohabitate or develop close connections with other affected parents and children in the same way. The possibilities for a health center that offers complex medical care, dialysis, chemotherapy, breathing treatments, infusions, dressing changes, first aid, and supports portable care that can be delivered anywhere on camp during an activity or a meal to avoid interrupting the regular schedule for campers was imagined. Leading children's health care centers from around the Great Lakes region were asked to become partners and send their specialists to camp to volunteer during the specific condition weeks to ensure high quality and available care. Hospital treatments do a great job of curing physical illness, and camp provides a vital place for psychosocial and emotional healing. The power of this disruption is limitless. A barrier-free camp provides a safe, accessible, inclusive, can-do, anything is possible, magical space that promotes maximal personal growth. We attack those perceived barriers and those beliefs. This growth is engineered by the power of possibility, enhancing resilience, and ultimately providing gains in self-efficacy. Children are finally able to look beyond their next medication dose, their next appointment, their next procedure, and begin to plan a productive future filled with empowerment, ready to take control of their new direction. Pictured here are some of our oldest campers, our teens. Many are bound for college. Some have left and returned to camp as nursing or program volunteers. We're fortunate to have had Michigan media spend time with us this summer, really documenting and capturing the camp magic and helping us tell this important story. And they've given us permission to actually show today a segment that will be released in the next couple weeks as a part of their This Is Michigan series. Summer camp in Michigan is almost a rite of passage for most kids.
This is my second summer here. It was really, really fun.
North Star Reach is a camp for children with serious health challenges.
What we really are is a place where kids can grow and develop.
People of all abilities should have opportunities that everyone else gets to experience.
And so that's why we're really excited to be able to offer that kind of an opportunity.
Every facility accommodates a wheelchair. Every cabin is paired with a nurse, and that nurse knows exactly what those campers need.
For the kids, they get a chance to, for the first time, to sit in a room with kids who've gone through a similar challenge.
Everyone at camp has something different. Everyone there is unique.
I thought I was the only one with seizures, and when I came here I was very shocked, and I was like, wow, I'm not the only one.
We spend so much time worrying about our daughter Madison. Here she gets to come and just be herself and live a kid-like life.
We started in 2016 with just under 300 campers served, and we're going to be close to 1,000 this year.
The same way that the campers wait a whole year to come back, the medical staff wait a whole year because it's what gives them joy. It reminds them why they do the work that they do.
They're getting to see kids at their best. They're getting to see kids not in the hospital. They're seeing them do what they were meant to do.
Just kids being kind to other kids.
You always have to think compassionately about people.
At every turn they teach us. They teach us.
Ultimately, I think the impact that the University of Michigan and the health system has had was being a part of creating a legacy.
They really bought into the long-term vision that this project needed to serve all kids.
They look forward to it every year.
And they come back more independent. Mm-hmm. And we come back more independent.
Once you show the child that they're capable of more than they thought, you've given them the keys to their future, and the possibility of the rest of their life opens up before them.
I'm really proud to be who I am, and thanks, guys.
North Star Reach opened 3 years ago and has completed an important first chapter. We appreciate the support and recognition for our program, and we're so excited to continue to imagine the next steps in growth of these programs. Camp is more relevant now than ever. Many children are attending camp today would not have survived their medical issues 30 years ago. Hospitals are focused on treating the most acute conditions, and camp provides a necessary healing bridge that helps complete the recovery. Parents and families are disrupted by the onset of these serious challenges, and camp helps them reset and prepare to adjust to a new normal. The positive impact on children, their families, and even the volunteers helps to build stronger communities that are more aware of the potential within each of these children. Healthcare providers who volunteer at camp return to work with validation that they're making a difference. They're inspired to push past their often day-to-day stressful work conditions in their clinical jobs and celebrate the optimal function they witness at camp. They enjoy transcending marketing territories and boundaries to work collaboratively with colleagues from competing institutions in a loving and safe environment that focuses on providing maximal transformation for kids. NSR, North Star Reach, is committed to continue disrupting the lives of children with serious health challenges, to grow our programs to address more medical conditions, to create new leadership training and support for children who are aging out, becoming too old to attend camp, and to use feedback from families and caregivers on how we can continue to create innovative programs that amplify the positive impacts and reach beyond the physical boundaries of camp and the perceived limitations of campers. We will continue to imagine the possibilities and to dream big. In the spirit that echoes Jim's mantra, be bold, be brave, be disruptive, and raise a little hell. Rita's given me a quick minute just to acknowledge my family members that are here. My wife, Joan, who's also a nurse practitioner in the health system, and my parents, Bob and Bobby Armstrong. Thanks.
The Services for Students with Disabilities has some awards to present to students from the Services for Students with Disabilities. Jill, are you presenting these awards? Jill Rice? Or whoever is, Dr. Kellum? Please come up here and present the awards for the SSD students. Thank you. This is Dr. Fred Kellum, who is the director of the SSD, and Jill Rice, who works as part of the SSD.
I am, in fact, Fred Kellum, the interim director at the Office of Services for Students with Disabilities. And I think you know, historically, it was the director who presented some of these awards. But as I reflected on it, I thought the people in the office who put all this hard work and diligence into stewarding these awards, I thought I should rather introduce them because they really worked hard to make this happen. So I didn't want to take that away from them. So rather, I would like to introduce two excellent members of the staff who are going to make those scholarship presentations, Jill Rice and Courtney Toddy.
All right, good morning. So my name is Courtney Toddy, and I serve in the Office of Services for Students with Disabilities. It is my honor this morning to present this year's Burt Black Memorial Scholarship Award. Through the generosity of Mr. Herbert and Dr. Christine Black, each year 2 University of Michigan students receive a $2,000 scholarship. At this time, I would like to take some time to thank the family and the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation for their support of students here at the university. Our 2 recipients embody the qualities of Burt Black by exhibiting optimism, determination, courage, and a zest for life through their academic achievements and involvement in school and in the community. While our 2 recipients could not be with us today due to prior engagements, I would like to take the next few minutes to recognize their achievements. Our first recipient for this year is Simon Keat. Simon is an undergraduate student here at the university as a neuroscience major within the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts. With a 3.8 GPA, he intends to pursue a career as a medical doctor in hopes of improving the lives of those with neurological disorders, especially individuals with various types of cerebral palsy. Our next recipient, Corey Johnson Lane, is a graduate student here at the university who is pursuing a dual degree. Her studies include environmental policy and sustainable systems within the School for Sustainability and environmental engineering within the College of Engineering. As a Division I representative of Rackham School Student Government, she is determined to become a leader in the water sector by helping to alleviate inadequate access to clean and affordable water for all communities. The Office of Services for Students with Disabilities is very proud to wish both Simon Keat and Corey Johnson Lane best wishes in their continued studies here at the university. Thank you.
Good morning. I am here to present the Saul and Shirley Lederer Awards. This year they were 3 $1,000 reward winners. Is Vade Shringaper here today? Let me tell you a little bit about him. He is a senior in industrial operations, and he has done research projects for the Toyota. He had an internship that he said was his dream job at Walt Disney World in their business operations to do that. So he is well on his way to do that. I know Jarek is here. Jarek Hartana, would you please come join me? Jarek is a freshman that enjoys chemistry, and he loves chemistry because of its perfect blend between imagination and logic. He is the founder of a nonprofit to bridge the gaps between hearing and deaf world. And we're glad that you and your guests could join us today. Thank you. Thank you. Dashiell Carrickner. I would like to introduce you to Dashiell. His plans are to be a rehab nurse. He is in the School of Kinesiology, or he may want to be a research scientist. He hasn't quite decided yet. He participates in adaptive sports, augmented reality system for inclusive play. And I'm also proud to have his mom here with us today too. So thank you. I am also here to present the Wesley Smith Award, and I'd like to recognize Bill and Joni Smith. They traveled all the way from Florida today. The winner of the Wesley Smith Award happens to have bronchitis today, and she could not join us. And she said, "I'm too sick to come." And I'm like, well, that's okay. We get it. We know. She is a violinist, and she's hard of hearing. But she doesn't believe that her hearing loss is an obstacle in her life. She started at the Colburn Music School in Los Angeles, and she's now at the University of Michigan playing violin. And she will be giving a presentation, if she feels well enough, next week at the hospital for one of their lunchtime activities right around the lobby. So we're, yeah.
What day?
31st, I believe. I believe it's the 31st at noon at the hospital. So thank you for the Smiths to being here today, and we appreciate everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We hope you've enjoyed the ceremony. The people who put it on find it very uplifting and really appreciate your presence. And don't forget, there are lots of other people affiliated with the University of Michigan doing wonderful things. Nominate them for what they do for disability and accessibility. Thank you very much for coming.